Hey everyone, my name is Ted's Friends and welcome to Tunes Tuesday, the 3-minute music show. And in 3 minutes, I'm going to be telling you why you should be listening to the new album from the Sidekicks called Happiness Hours.
Listen to love, it's happy with desire, waiting to be unleashed. In my heart, yeah.
Now, the Sidekicks have been around the indie punk scene for about the last 10 years, and you're likely to see them talked about in the same circles as Jeff Rosenstock, Modern Baseball, or Joyce Manor. Their new album, Happiness Hours, comes 4 years after the release of their admittedly lackluster album, Runners in the Nerved World. Now, that's not to say that the album was particularly bad. It's just that it came after an absolute triumph of an album, Awkward Breeds, and anything that would have come after that would have fallen a little bit flat, honestly. But Happiness Hours is a bit of a different story, in my opinion. It tends to hold up pretty well. There's a lot of movement on this album. There's a lot of taking the lead singer's vocals, Steve Kiolek, I think is how it's pronounced, taking his vocals and sort of putting them on their own, unsupported by anything else, and sort of just letting those flow through the song, and generally verses is what you'll hear it in. But then in choruses or in important parts, a lot of the time in falsetto, they'll double or triple his vocals, or they'll even add in this sort of blanket of sound behind his vocals very quietly in the background. And what it does is it allows them to make this really nice soundscape with his voice. And it creates this really nice contrast between what I was mentioning, those unsupported sections, and these sort of lifted up and movement oriented sections. And it overall creates a lot of really nice texture as well. In addition, on this record, I tend to get a lot of this vibe of James Mercer vocals from the Shins. It's especially apparent in those high falsetto range songs that I was mentioning earlier, especially in the song Twins Twist is where I tend to hear it the most. And on Runners in the Nerved World, I heard it throughout the entire album. One of the things I've really noticed, especially lately, and it's become very apparent, is this, especially with the mid-tempo indie punk scene, is this super 90s influence. I hear it a lot in the fourth song. What is that called? Win Affection. To me, that song could have been plopped into Pete and Pete. And this is a comparison I use all the time, but it could have been plopped right into Pete and Pete and from Nickelodeon in the 90s, and nobody would have batted an eye. Nobody would have thought anything of it. It fits right in. Pacing feels really good on this album as well. There's a lot of moments. There's a couple like interludes, but from the very beginning, they hit that sort of mid-tempo pace and then don't really stray from it. They sit in it and keep on going. Sure, they have, little variation here and there, but it stays within that 120 to 180 beats per minute sort of section, save for those two interludes, which really only are about a minute long each. So they don't really have a huge impact on the album, besides to slow things down just a little bit or just enough. And even more so, they save like that song, the slow song, for the very end. It's the final song on the album. And even on that song, it builds throughout the entirety of it. It builds and builds into this big momentum-filled moment that really signals a finale, an ending. And I absolutely love that. It creates a real sense of finality and satisfaction, almost, is how I would describe it. If I were recommending songs on the album, I would say the 11th song is probably my favorite on the album, and that's Medium in the Middle. Don't Feel Like Dancing is the 6th track on the album and is actually the lead single from the album. And then Serpent in a Sun Drought is the 9th song on the album, and that's another one of my favorites there. So thank you so much for watching, friends. If you are interested in checking out the new album from the Sidekicks, it's called Happiness Hours. You can find it either in CD or vinyl on their record label's website, Epitaph Records, or you could buy it from them digitally, and I would probably recommend doing that. Just because the money goes directly to them on sidekicksohio.bandcamp.com.